All right, Shalom. Before I get started, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakah Kwadash. I want to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and peace and salutations to the elect of the nation of Israel, which consists of you Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians. All right, so I want to go into a quick lesson. This is more of an introductory, Lord willing. Where I go in on more of the details based off of books and certain pieces of information. Going in on the raw details. But here's a map that me and the Akim and myself went to. We picked up at the Smithsonian Museum of the Native American Indian. Okay, and we're gonna get into all the details of it, but what I want to focus on is how Esau Edom, which is the so-called white man, all right, spread across the country, pretty much like a cancer, all right, and how he wiped out, okay, the Gadites, the Reubenites, mostly consisting of the Native American Indian. Okay. First things first, let me start off with a scripture. Let me grab Numbers chapter 35, verse 33. It says, "So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it." Okay, so this is another never forget video. Pretty much, never forget that you're on stolen lands. Talking about the land of America, and the scripture clearly says what the scriptures clearly said. This land that we're on is greatly polluted, and the Lord is gonna render a recompense for that. Okay. Another scripture, you going into the prophecy written in Genesis, the 49th chapter. Just finding it real quick, Salakia. Okay, Zebulon. Verse 19. Genesis chapter 49, verse 19. It says, "Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last." All right, so we're going to get into, some details that I got from this map on how a troop would overcome him. Okay, now here's the timeline, and I got some zoom ins on the 4 points. All right, it says the long history of losing ground. All right, now this is from the time of 1775 to 1819. It says a nation expands. It says recognizing that the Indians could swing the balance of power in the American Revolution, George Washington authorized Slovakia. It says George Washington authorized the first U.S. Indian treaty with the Delaware tribe in 1778. Hundreds of treaties followed, but settlers ignored them and continued to move onto Indian lands. First one and then another come, Seneca chief corn planter complained to Washington. Liquor and European diseases ravaged many tribes. Some Indians fought back. In 1791, an alliance of Midwestern tribes killed about 600 American troops at the Wabash River, but from 1811 to 1814, U.S. armies defeated Indian forces at Tippecanoe and Horseshoe Bend, and thwarted Britain and its Indian allies in the War of 1812. And that's the curses you see right there. Because another book that I have, going in on the Gadites and the details of the the Europeans, the English, the French, and the Spanish, you had a lot of Indians, all right, so-called Indians. You had a lot of Gadites and Reubenites fighting along with Esau, the so-called white man, all right, and that's the curses right there. A scripture off the top of my head. When you go to Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, you know, in the 54th verse, it says, "So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil towards his brother, and towards the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave." Okay, so you had Gadites and Reubenites helping this devil, okay, in his conquest to take over the Americas. All right, and of course, it says here that hundreds of treaties followed, but settlers ignored them and continued to move onto Indian lands. But because this devil, all right, Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, is the devil that the Bible speaks of. All right, and the scriptures actually speak on this. It's Psalms, the 55th chapter, and the 20th verse. It says, "He hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He hath broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords." Okay, so Esau, Edom, you took over the Americas in the worst way possible. Through rape, robbery, and murder, and lies and deceit. Okay, and a lot of help attributed to that was by the help of our own people. Okay, and not to mention that it was also prophecy. Okay, fitting the prophecy of Gad, a troop shall overcome him. Also, you can't ignore the blessing that Esau, Edom, was given. All right, in Genesis, the 27th chapter, where it says, "And by thy sword shalt thou live." Okay, and thou shalt serve thy brother. That's in Genesis, the 27th chapter, and the 40th verse. Okay, so this all the scriptures are just lining up with the history, and these are the gory and bloody. We'll get into some gory and bloody details in another lesson. But reading on, it says, solidifying. Let's see. It says, "But from 1811 to 1814, U.S. armies defeated Indian forces at Tippecanoe and Horseshoe Bend, and thwarted Britain and its Indian allies in the War of 1812, solidifying U.S. control east of the Mississippi." Okay, so it gives you the details. This is when the Edomites were first set foot on this land. All right, and established a settlement on the east side of the Americas. Okay, so you had the land that was transferred from the so-called Indians. All this in the yellow, all right, was taken over by Esau, Edom, before 1775. It says the land transferred. So they were basically being displaced. Okay, so on to the next slide. All right. All right. So it says here, the forced exodus. So this is 1820 to 1864. All right. In 1830, addressed to Congress, President Andrew Jackson, a former Indian fighter, declared, "What good man would prefer a country covered with forest and ranged by a few thousand savages to our extensive republic?" All right, and that's the words of an Edomite right there. It says, earlier that year, he had pressed Congress to pass the Indian Removal Act, which led to the forced relocation of many tribes to a designated Indian territory, present-day Oklahoma. Some resisted, including the Sauk and the Seminole, but virtually all were subdued. Most Cherokee reluctantly agreed to move, but their 1838 winter relocation and march along one of the trails of tears. Okay, and we're going to get into the details on that as well, Lord willing, in another lesson. This is more so just an introduction. Okay, Lord willing, in the series that can continue. And it says, along one of the Trail of Tears to the left, all right, killing 1/4 of the group. Death also reigned out west in the 1850s. Bands of California miners and vigilantes murdered Indians with impunity. Okay, so they were just basically killing them for fun and for sport, because they're the devil. All right, so you had the Trail of Tears, all right, which was the broken yellow lines, and you can see their journey westward, and back to the key here at the top. It says land held by the non-Indians, land transferred, and it's just like a forced exodus where Esau and his allies were forcing our people back through rape, robbery, and murder. Okay, and you can see on the second, it's like a plague. All right, Esau Edom represents the yellow here, and he's just starting to spread like a disease. Okay, so on the next slide, now you see now you start to see the true influence of the dominance. Okay, again, Esau Edom represents the yellow. So it says 1865 to 1894, the land rush. It says civil wars end and the railroad's expansion brought land-hungry settlers to the west. The U.S. voided its treaty with tribes in Indian territories, forcing them to give up lands promised for as long as the grass grows. U.S. Army spent the next 2 decades building forts and subduing tribes in the Great Plains and Southwest. You see that? Like they even broke the Indian Removal Act after they were already displaced and killed, and a lot of indiscriminate killings, rapes, things like that were happening to the people, and they promised them a certain settlement of the land, and they even reneged on that. Okay, back to the scripture, Psalm 55:20. He had put forth hands as against such as be at peace with him. He had broken his covenant. Okay, so it says, as long as the grass grows, the U.S. Army spent the next 2 decades building forts and subduing tribes in the Great Plains and Southwest. Apache leader Geronimo surrendered in 1886, technically ending the Indian Wars, though the massacre of Indians at Wounded Knee followed in 1890. And that's another point, that we got to get the gory details on, to remind you, to keep the memory, all right, of what a devil, all right, Esau Edom, the so-called white man, actually is, and the atrocities, all right, he committed. Okay, so it says in 1887, Congress passed the Dawes General Allotment Act, allowing the government to partition a tribe's reservation land into private parcels and giving each adult member a plot of 80 or 160 acres. That's where you get your 80 acres in a mule reparations. It's a joke. All right, so it says the U.S. then opened what was left to settlers, sparking land rushes. All right, so you see, and there's Wounded Knee. Okay, Little Bighorn. There's a lot of key battles where there was a lot of gory and grisly killings of our people, and mind you, our people, and mind you, this is after, the Israelites actually took Esau Edom in, made these treaties with them, showed them how to survive in the winter, and and uh, and and things like that. How to try to maintain a clean lifestyle, because of course Esau Edom brought the diseases over to this land. All right, and that's another great way. Uh, uh, um, the Americas was taken over is by disease warfare. You know, giving a lot of our people smallpox and things like that. But the last slide here, you see how everything's settled, and the natives of the land were reduced to a certain small pockets of reservations. All right, and everything is under U.S. control. So it says land held by the non-Indians, which is pretty much all of the land, and land transferred, okay, from 1895 to 2004. Okay, and the heavy red is the so-called Native American Indian land. All right, so this is Salakia. This is new battlefields, 1895 to 2004. It says, in the half century following the Dawes Act, Indians lost more than 90 million acres, much of it to swindlers. Then the struggle for land and rights shifted from battlefields to Congress and the courts. In 1934, the Indian Reorganization Act ended forced land allotments and bolstered the power of tribal governments. From 1946 until its expiration in 1978, the Indian Claims Commission reviewed hundreds of land claims and awarded millions of dollars in compensation. The U.S. began to acknowledge tribal sovereignty with the Indian Self Determination Act of 1975. A major turning point. In 1996, Indians filed a lawsuit against the Interior Department for an accounting of all funds from allotted lands held in federal trust. In 2012, a settlement with the government was finalized. All right, so pretty much they took their reservation, their reparations, and their crumbs from off the table that Esau Edom gave them. But pretty much, you're looking at a land that was completely stolen, uh, uh, uh through rape, robbery, murder, and deceit. Okay, so these are things that Esau Edom, the so-called white man, does. He's the devil that the Bible speaks of, and these are the an introductory of the details of a reminder how we're on stolen land, and in order for and that's how, and this is what America was founded on. You know, so it's how they say in the land of the free and home of the brave. Well, it's really how do they put it? The land of the thieves and the home of the slaves. We're really living out our prison sentence. All right, in stolen land. All right, under our captor Esau Edom. All right, and we're gonna get like I said, Lord willing, we'll get into more details. I have some references. I also have the names of the details of the individuals who actually took down our people, who are like the famous names, where you actually have who actually have landmarks, like you have the Hudson River, the Verrazano Bridge. We'll get into all of that. There's a quick scripture I wanted to bring out on that. That's Psalms chapter 49 verse 11. It says, their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They shall call their lands after their own names. All right. So there's a lot more details that we're going to get in on that. A lot of famous landmarks that that we all drive through all the time. The George Washington Bridge. These are all landmarks and names of thieves, robbers, and murderers, man. Okay, So, Lord willing, I was edifying. I'll call it there. With that, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai, Ba'ashim Rakah Quadash, double honors unto the apostles, the elders, great millstone, and shalom to the elect. All right, shalom.